Up to now, Latvian readers do know only your book, The Eye of the Needle. It's the only one, your title, that is published in Latvian, although we have published it twice. This year it was the second edition of the work. So this is how Latvian readers know you.
Okay.
So maybe you would like to say something about The Eye of the Needle, what this work means particularly to you.
Well, this was my first successful book. I had written 10 books before, and they'd all been published, but they were not bestsellers. So I was trying to write a bestseller, and Eye of the Needle was the first time I succeeded. And that's because it was the first book I planned. And now I always plan my books very carefully. Before I start writing them, I spend a long time planning. Eye of the Needle was also the first book that I researched, because it's set in the war, and I was born in 1949, so I have no memories of World War II. So I had to find out what life was like for people in Britain during the war, and doing that research helped me to write a better book. And so since then, I've planned all my books and I've researched all my books.
Most of my colleagues or friends who have read it, women usually say that they are delighted that one of the central roles is for female character, and we are all surprised how strong she is. Why do you place her such a strong role?
Well, this was in 1978 when this book was published in English. That was revolutionary, to have a woman as the hero of a thriller. Until then, men were always the heroes of thrillers. But it was much more interesting to have a woman playing that role. We've all read 100 thrillers in which two men have a fight at the end. But this was the first time it was a man and a woman having a fight at the end, and a young woman with a child also. So it made the book much more interesting, and as you say, it also meant the book appealed more to women than most thrillers do.
It was like a deliberately from your part.
It was, yes. I thought it would be. I thought it would make the book more interesting and different, and it did. Yeah.
And we are happy about that. Finally, Lucy gets some kind of reward. That her life afterwards is quite happy, as we can see from the final pages.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
That's right.
So, and what does this mean for you, that the novel you have written, that it is published in so many languages, in so many countries?
Well, it's kind of amazing. I knew, when I was writing it, I knew that it was better than anything I'd done before. And I thought that it would be a success. But I didn't dream that 35 years later, I would be doing an interview about the Latvian translation of this novel. And it continues to be published in new editions and new translations in different parts of the world. So it really is a book that has a life. And I'm very pleased about that.
Yeah, we are also very happy, and as I've told, that we have published it for the second time this year, and this means that the story is not going, it's still fresh, so it doesn't seem that like reading it that it becomes old or outdated, so it's very good. Thank you for that. And the next book, Zvaigznes ABC publishers are going to publish spring next year, is Pīlāri of the Earth.
Good.
This is entirely different from what our readers know. Maybe you could say some words, what to be prepared for.
Well, I was always interested in the great cathedrals of Europe, and I would go and look at cathedrals. And I became interested in how they were built and the people who built these great churches. And I became curious about why these medieval people who were very poor, these are people who slept on the floor, they didn't have beds, They lived in cold houses. They didn't have good food. They didn't have good clothes, and yet they spent all this money building these wonderful churches. And I became curious about that. And I thought there was a great popular novel to be written about building a great medieval cathedral. Some of my publishers did not think it was a good idea. They wanted me to continue writing about spies and the KGB and the CIA and the Nazis. But I was convinced that I could write a really unusual novel about building a church in the Middle Ages. And so that was The Pillars of the Earth. And at first, when it was first published, the reaction to it was mixed. People were surprised that Kenu Foletu has written a book about building a church. Some people loved it. Other people weren't sure how to take it. But slowly, it became very, very popular. And I noticed that people talked about that book in a different way. Some people would say to me, it's the best book I've ever read. And they never said that about Life. They would say, it's a wonderful book, I enjoyed it, I couldn't put it down, the suspense was great. But they didn't say it's the best book I've ever read. But they say that about Pillars of the Earth. Quite a lot of people tell me it's the best book they've ever read. So the reaction to The Pillars of the Earth from readers is much stronger than it is for most books. I think that's partly because the book is very long. And so you live with the story for a long time. It takes you a long time to read it. So you live with these people. And also, because it's long, you see the whole life of the characters. Instead of just an episode in the character's life, you see him as a child or as a young man, teenager, and then getting married and having his own children. So you see, so people, readers feel that they know those characters much better than in a short novel. So for all sorts of reasons, it's become a very special book for people.
You also mentioned that it's quite long compared, for example, with Eye of the Needle. And how long it took for you to write it? And what was the collaboration with editors or with the publishers when writing it, this process?
Altogether, it took me 3 years and 3 months to write The Pillars of the Earth. And I worked with my editors and others in the way I always do. I write an outline of the story and I show that to everybody and I ask them for comments and then I write it again. I write the first draft and I also show that to editors and ask them for comments. I also show my work to historians, Pillars of the Earth. I had 3 specialist medieval historians who helped me, who read the first draft and made corrections, and then read the second draft as well and made further corrections. So I collaborated with people, but that in the same way that I do with all my books now.
Have there been a case that I've heard sometimes that authors say that the editor asks to rewrite something? Has this happened also to you?
Yes.
You will need to change some plot or idea?
Yes, it happens all the time, and I encourage editors to make these comments, because if an editor says to me, it's wonderful, Ken, you're a genius, that's no good to me. It doesn't help me. It doesn't help me to write a better book. I like editors who say, it's very good, but you could improve, this chapter's a little bit dull, that character is not really believable, and so that I can look at my book again, and if I agree with their comments, then I change it. That process is quite important to me. I like that. I like, I'm not the kind of author who says, I have written it and it's finished and nobody else tell me to change it.
So when you write a book, and there is always one person who is the first who can read it. Who is for you that first reader of your works, whom you trust to read?
Well, the most important reader is Al Zuckerman, who has been my agent for many years, since the 70s. And he is better able than anybody else to help me improve my books. He's very critical. He frequently, he writes me long letters, maybe 40 pages, with criticism. most of what he says is good, and it leads me to make changes that improve the books. So he is the most important one.
And maybe you have some kind of idea or dream you are sure you would like to write something sometime in the future, not about Middle Ages, but you know that your readers like and you like that period of history. Something, maybe a crazy idea, a bit different from what you've done before.
No, I don't have any of those crazy ideas. I know what you mean. But really, the Pillars of the Earth was my crazy idea, you see. That was different from anything I'd done before, and everybody was surprised. So I've kind of done that now. And I've proved that I can do something different and still have a success. So I don't have to prove that now. So I guess, I mean, I could do anything I like, so long as it was a popular novel. And I wouldn't want to write any other kind of novel. I have friends who are novelists who don't want to sell 1 million copies. They write what they think is good, and if somebody else likes it, that's okay, but they're not trying to please anybody except themselves. And I'm different from that. I want to please millions of readers with my stories, and so I'll never write a book that's difficult to read, or a book that people won't enjoy, because it's just not, I have no interest in that. But apart from that, I think I can do anything.